Hello friends, thanks so much for joining me here at Non-Toxic Home. As always, I'm coming at you from our Non-Toxic Home, and thank you for being here. This video today, we are continuing in our video series on how to research everything. If you are new to this series, then the links will be below to previous videos in this series that you can check out. All of those are available on our website. So today we are looking at researching the researchers, how to research the researchers, and why we should research the researchers. Because anytime you are looking at a study, it is absolutely critical that you know where the researchers are coming from, because researcher bias is a huge issue in academia. This isn't a new problem. This has been an issue for over 2 decades. So researcher bias greatly impacts studies and meta-analyses, as well as any editorials they may write. One of the ways to research the researchers is to, and we say this very often, follow the money. Now, every research study should disclose, and this includes meta-analyses as well, the funding for the research. Now, there are some instances of meta-analyses in which there is no funding. So it's possible that there are researchers who don't disclose, don't say the funding for this came from XYZ. That isn't necessarily a red flag, because it's possible that there may not have been any funding at all. There are also some very limited researchers who fund their own research, such as Dr. Martin Pall, who researches non-native EMFs. He does some good work for the EHS community. In my opinion, of course, no one's perfect, and that includes myself. So if you follow the money, that is an excellent step in identifying whether research bias is coming into play in a particular study or meta-analysis. But one of the issues with following the money is that often it funnels through many channels. So we have the philanthropy lie of billionaires, in which they basically establish nonprofits, and then they funnel their money through these nonprofits, and these nonprofits then fulfill the agendas of the billionaires. And in this manner, we end up with research that is biased, because that money will funnel through a particular nonprofit, and then it'll be sent to another nonprofit, and then potentially even another nonprofit, before it is then dished out to the researchers themselves. So sometimes this can take some legwork in finding out who is actually funding these nonprofits. Also, the CDC, of course, and the FDA often fund research as well, but functionally speaking, the CDC and the FDA are the pharmaceutical and medical industries. Just research them. Just about every acronym agency here in the United States, functionally speaking, is the industry. And so you have, of course, a situation of the fox guarding the hen house. And this is not something that I'm simply spouting off. There are actually many senatorial hearings in which, for example, the Federal Trade Commission was literally in an open senatorial hearing accused, and I quote, of being the fox guarding the hen house, end quote. And so when you have these sorts of issues, this is important to keep in mind, because he who has the coin rules. And as such, if you are a researcher, if anyone who has real experience in academia, in areas in which funding is relevant, there are, of course, some areas of academia in which there isn't really much funding, because it's mostly theoretical, and or for example, literature, there generally isn't a whole lot of funding in the literature area of study. There is a little bit, but not nearly to the extent for a lot of other areas of study. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, is following the money. All right, one way to ascertain researcher bias, besides reading the actual study itself, of course, is looking at their other studies. Now I've been warning about PubMed for years, okay? PubMed, the Library of Alexandria, is on fire. We're seeing book burning right and left online. And this includes not only retractions of actual solidly conducted studies, but it also includes like blacklisting, gray listing, shadow banning, these sorts of situations, these sorts of issues. And this is particularly of issue on media streaming platforms as well as on social media and in search engines. So if you don't want to lose non-toxic home, please subscribe on all of our social media platforms, subscribe on all of our streaming platforms, bookmark our website, and sign up for our free newsletter so that you don't lose us, because a time is coming when you will lose us. We have been, well, not we, because my husband doesn't keep an eye on it, but and I very rarely do because the robots lie. But the analytics from Google for our search has taken just a gradual nosedive over the past 2 years, which of course is not surprising. I knew this was coming. But according to Google, basically we suck and we should just give up. But if you look at other sources, such as, for example, GoDaddy hosts our website. We use GoDaddy Website Builder because I'm not good at HTML and I don't like to deal with it. Then GoDaddy says you're one of the top websites online, period. So which is it? Because they both can't be true. So the time is coming, and it probably will be here quite soon, when you go to a search engine, you're only going to get one answer, because that's what Google's leadership has declared is the right thing to do, and that's where we're headed. Also, if you look into the dead internet theory, there's a series of videos online on that, which is highly accurate and reflective of my experience and that of so many others. So you really have to consider if there's anyone that you don't want to lose track of, basically doing everything you possibly can so that you don't lose them. All right, so if you're looking at the other publications of a researcher, PubMed is actually a good option for this. And the reason why I state this emphatically is because there's so much propaganda on PubMed. Of course, PubMed is hosted by the United States government, and there used to be a lot of good information on PubMed. You used to be able to put in, for example, the search is latex toxic. And the first page or two would have incredible studies, incredible meta-analyses demonstrating this to be the fact. And if you do it now, good luck with that. Of course, it changes from day to day, because apparently truth and fact change from day to day. Not in my world, but online it does. This is the world in which we're living in, and this you have to know this if you're going to do research on anything. You have to have discernment in knowing what is true and what's a lie, and recognizing that most of what's online has been curated to meet the interests of industry, not to reflect accurate real life information or fact. So looking at the specifically the editorials of the researchers can be very helpful, and a lot of times you can access these on PubMed. You can also go to Google Scholar, and that's also another good option to find these sorts of things, because a lot of times researchers will have editorials, or because they are engaging in peer-reviewed research, they will publish their responses to various studies. And you'll see that literally in some of these editorials and responses to other studies, these researchers will literally name call They would literally call other researchers names. And hello, ad hominem attack. Logical fallacy, anyone? Here's your logical fallacy platter. It is truly remarkable to see what the cult of scientism has turned into today. It is mind-blowing to me just to see how little science is in science today. But this is inarguable because the evidence is so overwhelming. Even if they don't engage in ad hominem attacks, which you only do if you don't have a logical leg to stand on, let's be honest here. And basically, if you are unaware, an ad hominem attack is when you attack the person and not the argument or the stance. And of course, you are attacking the person because you disagree with their assessment of a situation or their opinion or their belief. And you only engage in ad hominem attacks when your belief is based on emotions such as fear or anger. And of course, fear and anger are both used to control us today. So these other editorials often will disclose their true opinion and belief about a particular topic. Sorry, my cat's in the background meowing. Not right now, kitty girl. And for example, there was a mast cell activation study that I saw a couple years ago, and I don't pay attention to research anymore, to studies anymore. It's not worth it for me. It really is not. It's very, very rare that I look anything up on PubMed, Google Scholar, or any peer-reviewed studies, because once I realized that over 90% was junk science, then I realized that my attempt to gain any valid beneficial information from peer-reviewed studies was absolutely futile. It was an absolute waste of time. So there, sorry, my cats drive me nuts. For example, this mast cell activation study, I glanced just at the abstract and didn't even read the entire study, but just the abstract. I had I had a feeling that something wasn't right. I had a feeling that the researcher was hostile to the diagnosis of mast cell activation syndrome. And so what I did is I took their name, and generally you want to look at the lead investigator, which is the first person in the list of researchers on a study. So I took their name, copied and pasted, plugged into PubMed, and found very quickly an editorial that they had written that was basically saying that everyone with mast cell activation syndrome is all in their head. They're all idiots. They just want attention. It's just really a psychological disorder, and nobody should pay attention to them. And hello, hostility. So that's one method that has been helpful. And then also, a lot of times when it comes to natural treatment methods, for example, I have a video up. I don't know if it's on all platforms or not, but if you go to our website and search for natural epinephrine alternatives, that video is up there. When I was looking at some alternatives within the past couple years, which good luck finding any research on that anymore. That has been just, nope, gone online, just about. But I found a study that basically was saying, I don't remember what particular approach it was, what particular treatment it was for anaphylaxis. That again, I just looked at the abstract and I thought, this doesn't seem right. They seem to be hostile to natural treatments in general. And so I copied and pasted their name, plugged it into PubMed, found an editorial that they had written in which they said that everything natural is stupid. I mean, it may not have been a verbatim quote, but in their assessment, everything natural is dangerous and no one should use any natural herbs, and they should all be outlawed, and all of these other terrible, terrible things that made it very clear that their research was nothing to pay attention to because they were so biased. Now, if you are an honest researcher, then what you want to do is just come to the truth. And that's what science is supposed to be. Science is supposed to be a journey to the truth. That's not where we're at today. Today, we are in a situation, Kitty, stop, in which, sorry, what her deal is. She just came inside, now she wants out already. But we're in a situation in science today in which the fact is that truth is not desirable. It's just whatever the researcher, or more likely their funder, wants to confirm, rather than actually obtaining factual information, actually obtaining the truth. So regarding for example, if you're looking at a study right now, or research right now, you want to look and see, is that researcher citing opposing evidence? Because if they are being honest in their assessment of whatever they are examining, then they will cite opposing evidence from other studies, because the chances are very high that there is opposing evidence. Let's be honest here. And then they will generally say a reason why they deem that evidence invalid. This science just is not scientific today. All right. It isn't. You can't say otherwise. I mean, yes, there's a little bit of science here and there, but it's like this percent. I mean, it's like 1% of studies, maybe even less, are something to consider these days. It is just unbelievable to me. Also, the researcher, when you're researching the researcher, if you're looking at the study itself that you are focused on at the moment, then you want to see in the study, after they discuss the statistical analysis that they do they rip their study to shreds? Because that is what they're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do. If you conduct a study and publish the findings, you are supposed to find everything that's wrong with your research methodology and say so in your study. This is incredibly rare. This is so rare. It used to happen 20 years ago. Yeah, this used to be a thing. People actually used to do this. Researchers used to do this because that is science. I know I'm kind of on a bit of a soapbox here, but it is. If you desire to, study research studies, then I am equipping you with some information to do so. I'm not recommending that you do so, but if someone disagrees with you and says, hey, here is a study, then this video will hopefully assist you in ripping that study to shreds. Another issue to examine when you're looking at a study is to ask, are there true placebo groups? Is there a true placebo? For example, a true saline placebo. Y'all know what I'm talking about here. You can search that on our website with over 75 authoritative citations. I declare my assessment of the situation, as well as the results of over a year of research on this end full time. So I'm going to post this to YouTube, so I can't discuss that topic on YouTube. Can't read my writing. Oh, right. Is there an actual placebo group? Are they comparing one pharmaceutical to another and then declaring the newer pharmaceutical to be safe based on this other pharmaceutical? Because that's not a placebo. That's junk science. That does not demonstrate safety whatsoever. Why are people relying on studies like this? Why are people citing studies like this? Because they don't know any better. One of the problems that I noticed when I used to be on social media is that so many group leaders, forum leaders, support group leaders, they do read studies. However, they don't understand what they're reading. And they don't know how to evaluate studies for validity. So they constantly are sharing junk science. And that's a huge problem, because that means that they are literally harming the people who are in their community that they keep saying that they're trying to help, because they're sharing fallacious science. They're sharing lies. I mean, really, junk science is a lie. I would assert that junk science is a lie. It is deception. So they're sharing deceptive studies with them because they don't know any better. And, I've tried to educate some of these people in the past, and they just can't handle it. They feel like they're being attacked when I say, well, here's all the problems with this study that you just shared. And they say, well, why are you attacking me? I wasn't attacking you. This is what science does. This is what researchers are supposed to do. They're supposed to evaluate the validity of a study. That is what peer-reviewed research means. That means it's reviewed by a peer. That's how science is supposed to work. But most people don't understand this. And because ivory tower language is so rife in research in science today, the average person who doesn't have experience in this arena will read a study and they will think they understand what it says. They'll think that they understand what the researcher is saying, but because it's an ivory tower language, which is basically like legalese or a different language, it's basically like Spanish to someone who speaks English and doesn't know a word of Spanish except for hola. And the fact is that interpreting these studies requires discernment and understanding what the researcher is actually saying. To the average person, the sentence, the conclusion, the abstract says one thing, but to someone who actually understands the ivory tower speak, it says the opposite. All right, huge problems today. Also, the funding should be disclosed in the discussion of the study at some point. Typically, it's at the very, very end. So sometimes what I will do if I'm evaluating a study is I will skip, usually I'll read the abstract and then I'll skip to the end and I will look at the funding at the very end. Now, there was a study, actually there are 2 or 3 studies in a series of studies a few years ago that I looked at that were on mast cell activation syndrome. And it was declaring that radiation doesn't activate mast cells. And when I dug into, I didn't even read the studies. I just looked at the abstracts and they were laughable. They were just ridiculous. Anyways, so I said, okay, something's seriously wrong with this. And the series of studies was published by the same researchers and a specific group of researchers. I think it was South Korea, if I remember right. And so I looked at the funding, and the funding was from a nuclear power plant. So, this nuclear power plant, do you really think that these researchers don't have any bias? Follow the money. Look at where their funding is coming from. These researchers were literally on staff for at least 2 or 3 years, full time, for this power company. And their job was to prove that basically that non-native EMFs can't hurt anything. Their job was also to prove that if there's a nuclear power meltdown, no worries, no big deal. just, don't worry about it. It's all good. It's all good. Don't worry about it. And that was their livelihood. So do you really think that they're going to be honest and truthful in their assessment? And do you really think they're not going to design studies to obtain desirable information, desirable results? It just blew my mind. I don't even remember how I found out that they were on staff. I know that I found that it was a series of studies. I think I did a search engine search, and I probably used Google at that time for their names. I think that's probably what I did. And then I found the power company or whatever's website, and it was of course I had to use Google Translate because I can't read Korean or whatever language it was in. So this is a sort of kind of thing that I used to do as far as studies. I hope this video has been beneficial. If you want to support this sort of work, we are on Patreon, and we got PayPal tip jar. If you head to our website and click on support us, there's other ways to support us as well. I'm not asking. This is free. There's no tit for tat here. If you found this beneficial, though, please do at least give it a thumbs up and share it with somebody. I would appreciate that very much. Thanks so much. Have a most beautiful and blessed day, and I pray that this series is benefiting you.